Welcome back to the Property Auctions Podcast. I'm Dominic Farrell. I'm the author of the UK's #1 best-selling book about property auctions, which is available on Amazon and all other good book providers. This week, I want to talk about something that catches out a lot of auction buyers, especially beginners. How do you spot a fake bargain at auction? One of the biggest mistakes people make is confusing a low guide price with a bargain. They're not the same thing. A property can look cheap online, photographed well, be in a decent condition, and still be completely overvalued. Equally, a property that does not look spectacular at first glance can be a genuine bargain if the numbers, seller motivation, and timing are aligned. So, in this episode, I want to explain the difference between a real bargain and a fake bargain, using two examples from a very busy week we had last week. I was out viewing auction properties on most days with some of my mentees. Some had travelled from far afield, while others were local here in Liverpool. We saw a lot of stock, spoke to agents, reviewed legal packs, and ran the numbers. Two properties stood out. One was a fantastic bargain. The other looked like it might be a bargain, but once we did the homework or due diligence, it clearly wasn't. So let's start with the real bargain. On Monday, we secured a property before it even got to auction. And we've done this on a number of occasions over the years. While we were viewing it, an auction house was also there, presumably with a view to providing a valuation for the owner. So, this property was almost certainly heading towards auction. The auction house was assessing it, and the owner was clearly considering that route. But we struck first. And we were not the only interested party. Other people had seen it as well, and other offers were being made. But we secured it, and it's an absolutely fantastic deal for one of my mentees. I have no doubt that if that property had gone to live auction, it would have sold significantly higher. And indeed, I bumped into that very same auction house person some days later who confirmed that it wasn't just my opinion. So why were we successful? It was not because we offered a ridiculous amount more than everyone else. We were in and around the same level as other interested parties. The difference was reputation. If you build a reputation for completing on properties, if you have longevity in the market, and if agents know that when you make an offer you're serious, that matters. Remember, agents make their money when properties sell. They do not make their money when someone makes a big offer and then disappears. They do not make their money when a buyer ties a property up for 2 or 3 months, only for the sale to fall through. And if that happens, the agent may lose the instruction altogether because the owner gets frustrated and decides to send the property to auction anyway. So, from an agent's point of view, certainty has value. That's undeniable. A buyer who can actually complete is worth more than a buyer who merely talks a good game. And remember, agents and auction houses see these sorts of people every single week. That is an important lesson in auction property. Speed, certainty, and reputation can turn you into the preferred buyer, even when your offer is very similar to someone else's. That first property was a real bargain because the price worked. The timing worked, and the seller had a reason to move before the auction. We'll probably never know why they chose us and not the auction route. Now, compare that with the second property. This one is the fake bargain. We went to view it, and on the surface, it looked very good. It was in a very good location. It was in a very good condition. It looked like the kind of property that would appeal to many new and inexperienced investors. You could easily look at the photos, look at the guide price, and think, that's a great deal. That's exactly why people get caught out. They make a decision with their eyes before they've done the work with the numbers. They see a clean kitchen, decent bathroom, good condition, reasonable letting area, low guide price. Therefore, it must be a bargain. But that's not how auction buying works. A property can be clean, tidy, and lettable and still be overpriced. It can look easy and still be a bad buy. And this one, without any shadow of a doubt, was not a bargain. Even at the guide price, it was overvalued. So how did we know? Well, we knew because we ran the due diligence properly. Now, for us, part of the process involves using AI, artificial intelligence. We use Claude, and we've trained it to produce the information we need from auction legal packs and property data. You can cross-reference the findings using other AIs such as ChatGPT and Gemini. I should be clear. AI does not replace a solicitor. It does not have indemnity insurance. It certainly doesn't replace experience, and it doesn't replace you thinking something through logically and putting your own take on matters. That's the right word, your take on matters. But it is a fantastic tool for organizing information quickly and highlighting the areas that need attention. It's a great filter. So our process is structured. First, it tells us what documents are included in the auction pack. And then it tells us what documents are missing. So quite often, the missing documents are the most important. Most people only read what's in front of them. The better question is, what should be here that is not here? So, is the lease missing? Is an old management pack or LP1? Are the service charge details unclear? Are there any title restrictions, rights of way, planning issues, or building regulation issues? Do the special conditions of sale add unexpected costs? One property we looked at last week had £8,000 hidden in the special conditions of sale. So these things matter because at auction, once the hammer falls or the virtual hammer falls, you are committed. You do not have the same room to renegotiate as you might have in a normal private treaty purchase. So our AI review also looks at title issues, area intelligence, comparable evidence, and rental evidence. It produces red, amber, and green signals, along with questions for the auction house and questions for the solicitor. We've also trained it to calculate a maximum bid based on the full cost picture. So the costs, purchase price, auction fees, legal costs, normally times 2. Stamp duty, if applicable, that is below £40,000. Refurbishment costs, finance, holding costs, letting assumptions, comparable sales, rental demands, and margin if you are looking at refinance or a flip. So you've got to look at all those costs. So the Claude model that I've trained, it takes about 9 minutes to produce the answer. It really chugs along. But after that, we get around 15 pages of A4 with some sound data and analysis. Now, you're thinking this is going to cost a fortune, aren't you? Well, it's only £20 per month for as many properties as you like. Yeah, that's not a mistake. You heard it correctly. It's £20 per month, not £20 per property. So have a look at that. So on this particular property, the conclusion was clear. Even at the guide price, it was overvalued. It's a fake bargain. Now, this is an important distinction. A fake bargain is not always a bad property. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the condition is poor the legal pack is alarming, or there are title problems, lease issues, planning problems, and so on and so forth. But often, a fake bargain is simply a decent property at the wrong price. I'm going to repeat that. A fake bargain is simply a decent property at the wrong price. And this was the case here. The property was in good condition, reasonable letting area, and so on. So if the numbers do not work at the guide, it's certainly not a bargain. It's just marketing. This is why guide prices are so dangerous. The guide price is not your valuation or your maximum bid. It's certainly not a proof of value. Its job is to generate interest, get people through the door, create momentum, make buyers feel like they might get a deal. It appeals to the herd, and the herd like low guide prices, vacant possession, decent properties that don't need any work, and the herd will certainly drive up the price beyond what it already is. But your job is to ignore the emotion and focus on evidence. You must be a disciplined investor. Don't ask, is it cheap compared with the guide? Ask, does it work compared with the evidence? So check sold comparables, not just asking prices. In this case, the sold data was very, very clear. However, there is a property currently on the market significantly above the guide price of this target property. Just beware, that price has been coming down and will continue to come down. Do not use sales data as evidence when there is a significant amount of sold data which gives you the answer. And you also need to check rental demand, not just optimistic estimates. Again, in the description of this lot, I estimated the rental value was significantly out. You also need to read the legal pack clearly, not just look at photos, and so on. So, how do you spot a fake bargain? Well, the first warning sign is the guide price is doing all the work. If that's the only reason you're excited about it, you got to be very careful. A real bargain only looks interesting after you've checked the comparables, rent condition, title, and costs. A fake bargain looks good before the work is done, and much worse afterwards. The second warning sign is when property looks better than the numbers. A tidy property can make people feel safe, photographs well, it looks tenant ready, seems less risky than a property needing some work or a legal problem which needs to be fixed. But a nice property at the wrong price is still the wrong price, isn't it? The third warning sign is missing information. That's key. If important documents are missing from the legal pack, you need to know why. It's particularly a problem at leasehold property, where particularly the management pack is not included in the legal pack. And what the management pack, the LP1, will be telling you is about Section 20 notices, about service charges, and so on. It's critical information. If that's missing, you have to do a lot more work on that property in terms of due diligence. And as I say, missing information, it's not a small issue. It's where the risk is hidden. So we have that programmed into our Claude AI model to highlight the missing documents. The fourth warning sign is when the deal only works if everything goes perfectly well. So if your numbers depend on achieving the top rent, doing the refurbishment on time and cheaply, finding a tenant immediately and getting the finance arranged quickly, then it's not a bargain. It's a gamble. A real bargain has margin for things to go wrong. A fake bargain needs everything to go right. So what do you do when you find one? This is where people often make another mistake. They either get emotionally attached and bid anyway, which is what the herd do, and they all encourage each other, or they dismiss it completely and never look at it again. However, there's a third option. That's the option we choose. We've chosen it for many years. You have an unsold list. So the unsold list does exactly what it says on the tin. The property doesn't sell at auction. You go back afterwards and make an offer at a level that actually works. You'll see some examples of this on either our website at distressedassets.co.uk or in my book. There's some absolutely stunning properties which we've acquired after the auction. So when you go back to make the offer, you're not offering at the guide price. You're certainly not offering at the reserve price. You want a genuine bargain. You offer where it makes sense for you. Now, don't be put off if your offer is significantly below guide price. If you look at my book, you'll see an absolutely fantastic property, which is a couple of years ago, where it didn't sell at auction. The reserve price was £75,000, and we picked it up for £65,000, and that was revalued only about 6 months later at 46% higher than we paid for it, and that was a conservative valuation. So before the auction, the seller may be confident. They may believe the guide price is right. They may think the auction room will create competition and push up the price. And that does happen, certainly when the herd get behind a property. But if it doesn't sell, the psychology changes. The market has spoken. It's a bit like a political poll. It's not until the election that you know how it's all going to end. So the seller now has new information, and suddenly they may be more open to a realistic conversation. And in my experience, many are. That is why understanding the seller matters. Who are they? Why are they selling? What pressure might they be under? Are they paying off debts? Are they moving home? Are they clearing an estate? Are they buying something else that they've already mentally spent the money? And once a property fails to sell, the seller may be more willing to listen for all of those reasons. And if you've already viewed it, reviewed the legal pack, checked the comparables, and calculated your maximum bid, you are ready to move quickly. And that's a major advantage for an unsold lot, as most other people are thinking about it after the auction. Because professional buyers have already done the work prior to the auction. So when a lot is unsold, they can call the auctioneer and say something like, "We viewed the property, we've reviewed the pack, we're interested, but not at that price. Here's what we can do for you." Something like that. It's much more powerful than ringing up and vaguely asking what's the best price. So you need to be specific, credible, ready to perform, and again, reputation matters. Just as with the property we secured before auction, agents and auctioneers value certainty. If they know you can complete, your offer carries more weight. So the lesson from last week is not simply buy before auction or buy after auction. The lesson is to understand value. Sometimes the real bargain is the property you secure before it reaches auction. Sometimes it's the unsold lot that nobody wanted at the wrong price, which becomes attractive at the right price. And sometimes the thing that looks like a bargain is not a bargain at all. It's just a property with a clever guide price. So, in summary, before you bid, ask yourself a few questions. Have I read the legal pack? Do I know what documents are missing? Have I checked the title? Have I looked at sold comparable evidence? Have I checked rental evidence? Have I allowed for auction fees, legal costs, and other special conditions? Have I included finance and holding costs, such as council tax? Have I set a maximum bid based on evidence, not emotion? And most importantly, would I still think this was a bargain if the guide price was not there? That is the key question. Because if the whole deal depends on a guide price making you feel excited, you probably have not found a bargain. You've just found the bait. A real bargain survives due diligence. A fake bargain disappears under scrutiny. This is one of the biggest differences between amateurs and professionals at auction. Amateurs look for cheap, professionals look for value. Amateurs get excited by the guide price, professionals get interested when the evidence supports the price. Amateurs bid because they don't want to miss out. Professionals bid because they know exactly where the deal works and they stop when it does not. So, the next time you see an auction property that looks too good to be true, do not dismiss it immediately, but do not believe it immediately either. Do the work. Read the pack, find what's missing, check the comps, check the rent, understand the seller, set your maximum bid, and if it's too expensive, let it go to the room. Put it on your unsold list. Then for fails to sell, go back with the number that turns it from a fake bargain into a real one. Because the goal is not to buy something, the goal is to buy well. And you need to be patient. And there is a very big difference. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. If you would like to get in touch with me, my email is dominic@distressedassets.co.uk. Our website is distressedassets.co.uk. And also, if you wish to explore this topic further, then my book, Property Auctions, Repossessions, Bankruptcies, and Bargain Properties, is available right now on Amazon as either a book, an ebook, or an Audible. Thanks again. See you next time.